Well, it's my honor to. We usually do an attunement, but I'm going to leave that to Raphael. I'm going to introduce Raphael, and we'll just also I'll say just maybe a paragraph about the network. We're a group of people that we're our basic thing is that most of our members are spiritual but not religious, and we're dedicated to giving people tools and opportunities to develop the knowledge. People have dreams about changing the world, so we want to give them the tools to do that. And you can find more about us by going to our website, sacredinclusion.com. And let's see what else. Yeah, we do these. We do monthly and sometimes twice monthly events. And you've been hijacked into our mailing list. If you don't want to be on it, just unsubscribe, and you won't hear from us again. So now it's my honor to interview my friend and to some extent my mentor, Raphael Cushner. And I've written a little thing about him. Raphael is a leading voice in the world of emotional connection and present moment awareness. You may have seen some of his writings in publications such as the Oprah magazine, Psychology Today, and Huffington Post. He's the author of 6 books. He lectures worldwide, and he's a faculty member of the Esalen Institute, the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, and the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies. He's been a political activist, a Hollywood screenwriter, a workshop leader, and personal development coach who has included me amongst his many clients. In his most recent book, Surviving the Divine, a Memoir of Rude Awakening, he explores his back pages in a disarmingly transparent way. It's a chronicle of his somewhat messy and personal spiritual evolution. Among other things, he talks about his experience with the phenomenon of kriyas, or involuntary movements that can occur during or outside meditation. I'm a big fan of Raphael. I've been on his mailing list, as somebody mentioned, for ever since I met him. I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. And I don't know what he's going to do tonight, but I trust he's going to take us somewhere interesting in our exploration of navigating spiritual states. Raphael, the floor is yours.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Before I do or say anything else, I just want to offer a big hug of gratitude to Angelo, who I've always just enjoyed his big-heartedness and his big mind. And when he reached out to me and asked me if I would participate in one of these, I was a happy and instant yes. And I'm really glad for that because I can feel already such a good energy amongst all the people who've shown up. It's uplifting me, it's making me excited. So I also want to thank all of you for coming and bringing your own big hearts to our gathering this evening. So thank you so much to you all as well. I want to just quickly give you an overview so you have a sense of where we're headed tonight. In a moment, I'm going to talk about what it means to come together in safety. Then I'm going to have us do some check-ins so that we can come into individual and shared presence as fully as possible. I'm going to ask you after that for any burning questions you have or areas of interest that you want to make sure that I cover so that you can get the most value out of our time together. I'm going to talk a little bit about navigating spiritual states, and that will lead us into a series of exercises. So there'll be an interactive portion of our time tonight. Some of it will be you working on your own, and some of it will be with you having a partner to do an experiential exercise together. Out of that, we'll come back to some questions and answers, and then we'll probably add time. Do you guys hear that echo? Yeah, I don't know what's doing that.
Please mute yourself if you're not talking.
Yeah, that could be part of it, but I think the system caught it. That's good. If we have more time, I'm going to add more goodies at the end, but we'll just have to play with time and see where we get. So with that, I want to begin with just a very brief description of safety in an online community event like this and what it means to me, so that you kind of can share in that with me. So the first thing about safety in coming together in a group is, from my perspective, is that you really recognize that you are welcome as you are, moment by moment for the whole time that we're together. So when you're feeling like you're with the program and you're enthusiastic, you're welcome. When you have questions, you're welcome. When you have what I call yeah buts, you're really welcome to share those. Those are always really exciting. And then also, if you hear anything that doesn't sit quite right with you, that you don't agree with, then you're especially welcome to speak up, because my experience is whenever that happens, something wonderful follows from it. So this is a space where you're not supposed to agree with what I say just because I'm the invited guest. I really want to have an active and mutually respectful dialogue wherever that's going to be especially helpful. I also want to share it from a safety perspective that you are at choice throughout the time we're together. So for instance, if we're moving into a breakout and you don't want to be in a breakout, you don't need to be. I hope you all want to be, but I want to respect that some people might just be here to listen and not necessarily interact, and that's okay. The other thing about safety too is that it's really important that we all know together that we're not going to offer any unsolicited advice to one another. So we can really be heard and held in connection. Sometimes people might ask for advice, which is great. They might ask, my perspective, because I'm here to share, and that's okay too. But without the, okay from somebody that that's what they're looking for, we try to steer clear as much as possible from advice giving to keep the space really friendly and open, especially if there's something vulnerable that you're feeling or sharing. And then the last thing I just want to say about safety is that whatever you're feeling emotionally is really welcome. So you might be really excited to be here. You might have had a hard day and you might be feeling fragile. You might be feeling irritable, but any emotional state that you're noticing and that you're willing to welcome within yourself, we're here to welcome with you and for you as well. So that's, a brief description of the kind of safety that I would like for us to co-create together. Let me just pause and see, does anybody have any question about that or any need around safety that they'd want to get in before we get rolling? Okay, so the next thing I want to do, because it really is my mission here to be of service to you in this gathering as much as possible, I want to check and see if, because the title of this event and the subject of it is a little bit unusual, and it's not even the usual Raphael kind of stuff. I want to check and see if anything of special interest brought you here, or if you have any very important questions that you want to make sure that we cover while we're together, that we give just a couple of minutes before we proceed to get that information from you. So if you're just here and you're curious and you're open, all good. But this is the moment if you want to share, especially what caught your attention and your interest, then just raise your hand. We'll call on you and give you a chance to share that. I usually pause a little extra because I know that's, yep, there we go. Edie, why don't you share?
I'm kind of just on the edge of opening into some interesting experiences, and I want to be ready for whatever comes up so that I don't resist it. I know once or twice I've, something's come up and I've shut down and out of, that sort of immediate reaction. And that seems a shame. And also, I know sometimes things can be what we might consider unpleasant or uncomfortable. But so I'm interested in knowing how to handle those sorts of things if they come up, and hoping that, this is a new opening that's developing in my progression.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much for contributing that. That's really helpful. And I think some of that will come through as we go, but just as a preview, what I want to share is that it's natural in the moment that something comes across our consciousness that we're not familiar with. It doesn't necessarily feel like anything that we know or understand, to have an initial contraction. So I want to support you in knowing that that doesn't make you in any way, less open, less available to experience what you're about to open into. It's more about what happens after that, right? So if you notice that you have an initial contraction, and rather than resisting your resistance, which just creates more resistance, if you can accept your resistance, kind of breathe your way back into presence, then there's no harm done, and you're just a human being. So that's my first pass at an answer to that question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Okay, good, good. Anyone else want to raise their hand before we continue onward about your own special intention for being here, if you have one? Okay, so there'll be time for more questions as we go. You're not losing an opportunity, but just because there's nobody eagerly next, we'll continue on with our time together. Okay, so this is the time where I'm gonna just spend a few minutes talking about these states that will lead us into the participatory part of our experience together. The first thing that I wanna say is that I think that it's important to we use the term spiritual states, which makes sense because it's not these states that come through us. They might have a physical manifestation, but they don't have a physical origin. They're spiritual in nature. They're energetic, let's say. But I think it's really important for us to talk about them as non-ordinary states. And let me just describe a little bit about why I'm suggesting that. We grow up into our bodies and our personalities and our lives, becoming used to things that are actually extraordinary. But we're so used to them, we don't even relate to them that way. So for example, when you eat food, your body digests that food in a whole miraculous process that mostly goes unattended by you. You're not sitting around going, wow, I'm digesting right now, and it feels good. Usually, the only time you'd be paying attention to digesting would be if it was going badly and you were mad or upset because you're feeling pain and discomfort. You're finding a problem, right? So I would say that like the experience of digestion, or the experience of looking at a beautiful sunset, or the experience of having a beautiful conversation with someone, or making love to someone, that these are amazing states, that they have a spiritual component or origin to them as well, but we're used to them to some degree. And so that's why I would call those ordinary states, not ordinary as in banal, but ordinary in the sense that they don't challenge us. They don't seem other. They don't confuse us, but because they're part of like the lexicon of being that we've been experiencing our whole lives. And so what I wrote about in my memoir, and what Angela was interested in us sharing today, was what about states that arise that we don't have a lifetime of context for? And that's what I think is a non-ordinary state. That's why I'm using the term. So for example, and if you heard the podcast with Angela and I, you might remember this. If you're walking down the supermarket aisle and you're feeling open-hearted and you have a sense of compassion for the other people who are rolling their carts by you, that's not challenging, right? But if suddenly your hand were to start to flap, without you choosing for it to flap, and it's, it looks like you're trying to figure out what cereal to buy, or hopefully it feels like that, because otherwise people think you're having a seizure, this is non-ordinary, right? What am I supposed to do with that? So that's kind of the terrain that I think it's important for us to look at, and a way to look at that terrain. And I'm going to say just a few things about it. The first one is that it doesn't make any sense to try to experience any non-ordinary state. because trying to experience something that you're not experiencing creates a certain kind of resistance of the now, of what you actually are experiencing. And part of the reason that it's important not to try to have any of these experiences is because they're decidedly not better than any other experiences that we have. They can seem exalted, they can seem divine, they can seem like they're being gifted to us. And maybe in some sense that's true. But as soon as we think that they're better than other states that we're more commonly used to, then we get into a dynamic that's not really helpful in integrating those states in the best way that we can. So they're not special, and we're not special for having them. They're just different. But the difference really matters. And I think that the thing I would like to share about that is to say that it makes the most sense to be curious about those kinds of states if they come, and gently curious. In other words, not insistent, not provocative, or not intense, but really open. What is this? What's here? Can I experience it? Can I welcome it as fully as possible? And what I would say about that, in addition, is as we grow spiritually, it's as if we started in life with, let's use a radio as a metaphor. And let's say we started with 10 stations on the dial, stations that we can tune into for different kinds of experiences, mental experiences, emotional experiences, etc. As we awaken and as we grow in our spirituality, new channels open up on that radio dial. So we might have started with 10 and then suddenly we have 50. And sometimes those include, the kind of siddhis, they're called in the Hindu tradition, special powers. Sometimes you might be able to be clairvoyant or clairsentient. These, again, are not better. They're not advanced states from my perspective. They're just new stations that opened up on the dial of your own consciousness that then, if you choose to, you can investigate. Or if they come at you and start creating experiences inside of you, you can investigate them and open to them as much as possible as well. But holding them in the way that I'm describing is a really helpful way to avoid a certain traps. Traps like, uh-oh, there's an emergency, or traps like, I've ascended, I'm a master now, or just being, filled with confusion. So being welcoming, curious, and gentle, and recognizing them as non-ordinary rather than anything special about them or about you feels to me like the best approach, especially when they begin. And let me pause there because I know I shared a lot, to see if anybody has any questions, buts, or even counter ideas that they want to share so that we're in as much of a dialogue as possible. It's okay if you don't, but I'll just be quiet for about 10 or 15 seconds to see if you screw up your courage to share anything at this point.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I was wondering, does it affect things like we have so many stimulants in our life, like some people, there was a time where we never experienced ice cream before, and the first time we experienced it must have been you get this sugar rush, but then you appreciate things that are less sugary, I guess less. Is that something in the field where we're overstimulated by our surroundings? We're just overstimulated and then we sort of lose our ability to appreciate things because we're overwhelmed with other stimulants.
Yeah, there's a lot of really juicy stuff in what you're saying. I'm going to try to catch a few pieces of it. So one of them is that we live in a world that is absolutely overstimulating. It's really hard to get away from it. And so some of these states that I'm describing are subtle at first. And it's easy in our hectic and overstimulated lives to even miss those stations on the dial that might be available to us. They might be there, but we don't even hear it. We don't even notice. So that's one piece I think it's good to respond to in what you're sharing. Another thing to say is that sometimes these states are overwhelming, and that's meaningful and important in two ways. One of them is that we can get, no surprise, addicted to some of those states. And that's especially why I was mentioning that they're not special in a way that would cause us to seek them out. If we do bring a compulsive or addictive quality to them, because sometimes they're absolutely ecstatic, we end up potentially getting attached to them, and that keeps us from being as fully present to the rest of our lives. So that's another piece. And let's see, there was a third one I was going to mention. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I'm not catching it. So Joseph, that's your name, who you shared, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do those two answers, are they helpful? And do you have anything else that you'd want to ask about that?
Yeah, they're helpful. Yeah, definitely. Especially about it not being like one thing that is over, like there's not like one experience that is exceptional, and it's just, and you can also, like, I guess in a way, abuse that experience too, in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are a couple of things I'm going to add because my thoughts came to me. So the first one is that sometimes they wreak havoc with our bodies and our minds, and we need to get more grounded. And so there are a lot of different grounding practices. Some of you might already know about them, but I had experiences where the energy was so blasting up and out, up and out, up and out, that I needed to get on the ground. And literally I would just get on the mud, on the dirt, and just stay there. And that would really help me to balance out what was happening. And sometimes people eat heavier foods than would normally be healthy for them, to try to make sure that the energy doesn't lift them off the planet, so to speak. So that's another part related to what you're mentioning. Yeah. So great. Thank you for that, Joseph. I appreciate it. Anyone else have a question or a comment or a yeah, but that would be helpful at this point? Okay, so we'll continue. And if you do have one, there'll be a chance later, and you can also write in the chat if you would like to as well. Okay, so in the Hindu tradition, I'm coming back to that again because my experience was Kundalini. This is the best way to describe it. Different traditions have different names for it, but that's the very rich tradition. I didn't know it at first, but I came to understand that later, that that was the best description for what was happening to me. But in that tradition, it's said that there are two great forces of existence. One is Shakti, which is the energy of that which arises. So all phenomena is made up of energy. So everything that arises is Shakti. And then Shiva, which is the consciousness that beholds what arises. So energy and consciousness are the play together of what makes up the reality that we experience, whether it's ordinary states or non-ordinary states. And in the tradition, they say that when Shiva and Shakti are in exquisite union, when they're indivisible from one another, that's the experience of enlightenment. I like to think of enlightenment not as a lasting state, but as a moment, as an experience that we all have the potential for. And in a moment where awareness and experience, awareness and energy are inexplicably, indivisibly intertwined, that's an enlightened moment. And so we're going to do some practices that help us understand what that means in an experiential way rather than just as a concept. The first thing that we're going to do is something that I'm pretty sure that all of you have done, at one point in your life. Maybe you've done it for years. And so we're just going to start with that, like as a foundation. Maybe for some of you, you've only done it a little bit, and so it feels a little bit fresh for you. But either way is fine. The first thing that we're going to do is spend 2 minutes in a mindfulness practice. And I'm going to describe just in a few sentences what I mean by that. Remember, Shiva and Shakti, consciousness and energy. So in these 2 minutes, your mission is to have an open consciousness that is able to notice whatever crosses its path. So you imagine that you're just a field, your essence is awareness, and what crosses your awareness might be a sound of a honking horn outside, or a stomach ache, or a feeling of sadness. And of course, because everything moves and changes, what you experience as Shakti will move and change. But your mission in this warm-up exercise of mindfulness is just to recognize that what's happening as you don't try to do anything, as you keep relaxing into present moment awareness, is that you're having the opportunity to bring your consciousness to meet and to welcome whatever comes through it, whatever shows up, whether it's one thing or many things, whether it's a lot at once or just one thing at a time. So just for 2 minutes, silently, and you can have your camera on or off, whatever feels comfortable. Your mics are muted, which is good. Let's just be mindful together. And if anything about that is interesting or surprising or confusing, we'll talk about it afterwards. But this is just the experience of Shiva and Shakti within you, you relaxing into presence so that you can hold them both, experience them both coming together. So let's begin. Okay, let's come back into our regular awareness. And as I mentioned, I know that that is familiar to many, if not all of you. But just to pause before we go on to see, with that framing of Shiva and Shakti, energy and consciousness, is there anything that you noticed that was of particular interest to you, a surprise, something different from what usually comes up in mindfulness? Anything that you want to share before we go on?
This is Keisha. I just kind of noticed that like my ears, I don't know if they're like vibrating or if they have like a very like low like ringing tone. That was like one of the biggest things that I noticed. I'm kind of leaning more towards like I feel like they're kind of like vibrating.
Mm-hmm. And is that an experience that you have at other times, or is it fresh to this moment?
Honestly, it's fresh to this moment because I'm like very sensitive, so I pick up on things pretty easy. But I don't think I've ever noticed that before.
Well, I appreciate that, because sometimes when we actually just create an open space for experience to arise without us deciding whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, whether it's a problem, if we're just willing to meet it with a neutral consciousness, then sometimes more shows up or different shows up. So I'm pleased on your behalf that a channel of awareness or opened up so that you could notice an experience that wasn't there before.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So this is going to be what's next, our first interactive exercise. And it's going to take me a few minutes to describe it. So here we go. Most of the work that I've done is around connecting to emotions. And one of the things that I found about that is that you can't, well, let me back up a second and say that I teach people how to quote unquote surf their emotions. And I use that term because surfing is a very interesting activity in which there are two things that are moving together. There's the board and then there's the wave underneath. And when you are riding a wave, the more closely those two things are flowing together, the better the ride. If you look up at the clouds, or if you start having a worry about the rock that's ahead of you, or is the wave too big, you'll wipe out. But when the surfer on the board and the wave itself are flowing together, that's the great ride. And when you think about emotions, I like to think of surfing emotions in the body, in which the surfer is your attention and the wave is the experience or sensation that you're having in your body. Now, why I'm sharing that with you in relation to the meditation that you just did is that what's unique about surfing emotions in the body is that you can't surf a wave from the shore. In other words, you can't sit back with your open Shakti consciousness and ride the wave of something that's over there, or more appropriately, that's in here. You actually have to bring your awareness to the point of experience and ride that wave where it is. And you have to do it in a way that is non-interfering. You let the wave lead you. Your consciousness follows the energy or the experience. And when that happens, you're not trying to understand it or change it or make it go away. You're just going for the ride. But when you do go for the ride, you end up coming more fully and more deeply into presence. That's why we do it. That's how connecting to our emotions allows us to get their message and their wisdom, and also to become more present in the process. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to do some surfing of the sensations inside your body with a partner. And I'm going to describe what each of your roles is and how long you're going to do that and what that's going to look like. So here are the instructions. One of you is going to be the surfer, and your whole job is to do just what I described. Your partner is going to say, so what is happening right now? And you're going to give just like a few words of description. You might say, I'm feeling an itch on my knee, or I'm feeling tired in my eyes. And then your partner is going to ask you, can you surf that? Just an open invitation. It's not a yes or no question. It's more just like, are you ready to go for that ride? And you might wipe out a bunch of times because you might be distracted, or your mind might come in with lots of self-talk. Doesn't really matter. Every time you wipe out, The only thing that matters is the wave of this moment. And so you just get back on your board, so to speak. And so you're going to have the benefit of a partner who's prompting you every, let's say, 30 seconds or so to say, so what is happening right now, to refresh you in case you've lost your wave. And you're just going to have 5 minutes of time to know what it's like. This is the key here. This is why we're doing it. To take your Shiva, to take your consciousness and bring it to the experience you're having. If you're having an emotion and you feel safe to ride that wave, great. But you don't have to have an emotion. You're surfing whatever sensations arise inside of you. So it could be hunger, it could be fatigue, it could be confusion. Whatever you're noticing, you let it lead you and see where it goes. And then at the 5-minute point, I'll come in and I'll say, okay, everybody, now it's time to change and to switch. And you'll shake it out, you'll thank your partner and get resettled again. And then the one who was asking will be the one who surfs, and the one who started out surfing will be the one who asks. And the whole thing is an experiment in what it's like to bring your consciousness to what you're experiencing within. Any questions about that? So you'll get the most out of it when we start to the practice.
All right. So you want to go first, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, sure. Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, so I'll let you do it, and I'll just say every once in a while I'll say what's happening. What are you noticing? All right. So. What are you noticing?
I can feel like a kind of like pressure above my eyes.
What are you noticing?
Pressure is kind of subsiding.
What are you feeling?
Tightness in my shoulders.
And what are you feeling?
I can feel my stomach being full.
And what are you noticing?
Tension slowly releasing in my shoulders.
What are you feeling?
I can feel the food starting to digest in my stomach.
What are you feeling?
I feel my jaw relaxing.
What are you feeling?
I can feel my back muscles starting to relax.
What are you noticing?
The breath filling my lungs.
What are you feeling?
Slight throbbing in my right wrist.
What are you feeling?
There's like a tightness in the muscles in my legs.
What are you feeling?
My feet feel heavy.
What are you noticing?
My wrists are starting to relax.
So let's just spend a moment. I know you had a chance, hopefully, to debrief a little bit with your partner, but anything of note that would be good to ask me or to share with our whole group about your surfing practice? Okay, so sounds like you were all expert surfers. You didn't wipe out at all. You followed the flow of your experience. Shiva and Shakti came together and you had an enlightened wave, an enlightened ride. Good to hear it. All right, so this is the place where we're going to get to do a practice that I don't share with people very often, that's connected to the reason why you came to this particular event when you read what it was about. And that is the next level of bringing Shiva and Shakti together, which is especially important if you are having a non-ordinary state and you're wanting to get the most out of it, you're wanting to flow with it, bringing as much ease as possible and as much benefit as possible. And so it's going to follow on the practice that you just did, but take it further. And here's what I mean by that. You're going to have the same 5 minutes. I don't know, you may have the same partner or a different partner depending on how the situation ends up. It doesn't really matter. But this time, the question is going to be, the first question is going to be the same. What is happening right now? And the second question is, can you merge with it? And so what that means is, and it will look different, it will feel different for each of you, is once you notice what your primary experience is, so for example, a tightness in the chest, what a surfing process does is bring your attention right to the edge of that tension. That's how you take the ride. But going further, the idea is, can I welcome it so fully, and can I bring my attention to it so completely that there isn't any separation between the experience and the experiencer? Can I drop as fully as possible into what I'm experiencing so that those two sides of the same experience, Shiva and Shakti, are in fact as fully joined as possible? So for some of you that might make instant sense, for some of you that might feel confusing, or I don't know how to do that. But if you go into it, not just to the edge of it, then things happen sometimes. A new degree of connection happens within you. And that has the potential often to open up more channels on the dial, as we were talking about before, or bring a dial in to greater clarity. The static can sort of dissolve and bring you into an aliveness, even to the point that you've never experienced before. So this is the place we were heading in this series of 3 exercises. Same as before, but just to repeat, what is happening right now, and can you merge with it? And just play around. Let it be an experiment. There's no way to do it wrong. Sometimes it might feel impossible. Sometimes it might make you self-conscious. But sometimes it might just allow you to, and here's what I said this before, but I'm going to use these words again. It might allow you to relax ever more fully into the experience. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what will help you also with any kind of non-ordinary states that might arise in your own spiritual practice.
Sherry has raised her hand, Raphael.
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks for doing that, Sherry. Go ahead.
I was a little confused at how long I should wait before I ask the next question. What's happening now? And
yeah, so I kind of hurried a little bit through the description of how to do it because we don't have a lot of time. So I was worried about that, and so I'm glad you brought it up because it will help us in this next round. So what is happening right now is the first question, and then you're watching the other person, and then within a few moments, or maybe more if they need it, they might say, the tension is swirling around and moving up into my throat, for example. And then after they say that, then you would answer, in this new round, can you merge with that? And then you're watching them do their best to relax into it. And generally speaking, you can kind of tell intuitively when it's time to ask again. But just because we don't have a lot of time to refine that, I would say give him 20 or 30 seconds and then start the cycle again with the first question. Okay, good. Any other question or thought or something to bring up before we go to the next round?
I guess I just want to reiterate it to make sure that I'm hearing it, and maybe other people want that too. So basically the questions are, what's happening right now, and then can you merge with it?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. And so after that, we'll give you a chance to debrief with your partner in the exercise and to come back and debrief with me and the rest of the group, and we'll do some Q&A after that.
I'll let you can do me first, and then then we'll switch.
All right, sounds good. Okay. What is happening now?
I'm listening to tomorrow.
Okay, what is happening now?
I'm smiling.
Can you merge with that?
Yes.
What is happening now?
Feeling happy.
Good. Can you merge with that?
Yes.
What is happening now?
I'm listening to an inner sound.
Can you merge with that inner sound?
Yes.
What is happening now?
I'm worrying that you might miss the opportunity to transition. The chat thing that Raphael put up.
Can you merge with that?
Yes.
What is happening now?
Okay, welcome back to the big room, everybody. I just want to give you a heads up. Where's Angelo? Did we miss him?
I'm right here.
Oh, there he is. I'm seeing that we'll probably go over about 5 minutes or so. And for some of you, that will be okay. But if you need to go for your schedule, I totally understand. And I'm sorry that we're going over, but I'm doing my best time-wise. From you, I want to hear anything of note or a question that came up around the merging practice. It's okay if there isn't, but anyone want to bring anything to the group and to me?
Yeah, I'll
go ahead.
real quick. I don't know if I can put this into words, but one feeling was that there was just like an initial uncertainty of a new person, and I'm in a new setting. And after some time of going through this process, there was like kind of a breakthrough where we both kind of realized how much on like the same page and in the same kind of wavelength we are. And then I think from there on forward, it was a really great like union. And another thing is how like certain things happened where our perceptions of these events were so different. And it was interesting, like they had their roommate like opened the fridge and did something. And to them, they were like concerned, like, oh, can they hear it? And to me, it was almost in my subconscious. Like I heard it, but I didn't even think about it at all until they mentioned it. And it was just like, I don't know, it was just interesting. It happened like a couple of times, but it was like.
Well, one of the things about working with energy in this way is that we start to find out how not separate we are and how contagious energy is, how it moves through us and it bonds us and it opens us in different ways. So you had an experience of where one was convergence, how after a little bit of unfamiliarity, you got really on the same wavelength. And then you also had the experience of separateness where you experience something differently. And I think that we're always dancing between those two things when we're really open, especially if we have a lot of stations on our dial. There are times when things will happen that are unique to you and another person or a group because it's a field of energy that you're dancing in. And then sometimes you'll just also be regular, ordinary human beings with different perceptions of the same events. And both are true at the same time. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Anyone else want to share something?
I can quickly mention it was great to feel going deeper and deeper with each question.
Mm-hmm.
And the second exercise was deeper than the first one. That's felt very gratifying, actually.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I felt tingling in my hands, in the hand.
Yeah, a sign that there was energy liberated through the merging. I love hearing that. And also, I'll just let you guys all know that on my website, which is Cushnir.com, there's a free guided emotional surfing meditation. There's a long one and a short one, and each of them have a version with music and a version without. That's me guiding you into the surfing practice. If you want to, do it on your own with a recording to get, better at it. So when you're doing it by yourself, because obviously most of the time you won't have a partner. But the words that I'll be using in that are more about, can you surf it? Can you be with the wave? But you guys have the advanced version. So you can imagine that I'm saying, can you merge with the experience and see how far it takes you? And Arnold's right that, the more you do it, the more opportunity you give yourself to open those new radio, those channels on the dial and the volume on the dial. Yeah. We've got a couple other questions. So Tamar, you have a question or a comment?
Hi, everyone. I just want to share something lovely that happened. I love these kinds of practices. Thank you for sharing this one with us. It's so nice. Lee and I, at the end, I definitely felt like we connected more and more as the practice went on. And at the end, I shared that I was feeling my heartbeat. And Lee shared like, oh, that's so interesting because I at the exact moment felt my heartbeat. So we had this like merging of feelings, sensations in the body that I think are really positive.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we say we're all one, we say there's no separation, but the experience of it is profound. And I think that we actually don't end where our skin sacs are, that, you know, who we are becomes clear to us the more we actually allow us to merge with others, in a safe way, of course. But yeah, I love hearing that. And it's just, again, more corroboration that we learn who we are through connection, not through separation. Yeah. And Joseph, you had your hand up as well, I think. But you're muted.
Oh, hey, so I had like a feeling that I had first gotten when I had used mushrooms for the first time. I've only ever used it once in my entire life, like years ago. And sometimes I'll get it back, but it's usually like involuntary. It comes in like really surprising times. And so it just happened when I was I guess like surfing the waves, and like yeah, it's sort of, it's like a, almost like a bubble, like I only could describe it as like a bubble in a balloon, like an air bubble, like filled with water. And there's like this bubble that can like float into different areas, and it just sort of stays there. Like, yeah. So I was just kind of like, my head is like, gets like really light and everything. So I wasn't sure if like, meditating, does that like normally bring that out, or?
So it's different for everybody, but what mushrooms do essentially, which is soften the boundaries of the ego and allow us to connect to more and different and everything. So it's not surprising, but it's lovely that you had a mushroom-like experience just from choosing to merge your awareness with your experience. And that goes to show you that, you know, if you want to take mushrooms, you can, but you don't need the mushrooms. You're getting to the same place. Yeah, awesome. All right, so before we close, I want to mention one thing that I think is really important. It may not be so important in this moment, but it may be down the line for you. And that is, not all experiences in the non-physical realm. Oh, I see that someone else wanted to share, and I'll get to that person in a moment. Not all the experiences that are non-physical are positive. Not all quote unquote entities that exist in the non-physical space are positive. So it's really important that if you're not sure, if you're having an experience that isn't like a lovely mushroom trip, maybe scary, there might be some intensity to it, to be able to, first of all, ask whatever is coming to you, are you here for my highest good? And if you're here for my highest good, you're welcome. I'll work with you. But if you're not, you don't have a place here. And being able to assert that and then practice that discernment is really important. And if you ever come across a moment like that, I would say reach out to me, you know, keep my email handy somewhere, because I love to support people in these difficult places, especially because there aren't that many people who you can find who can talk to you about it. But also you can do it further by saying to whatever's happening, the way that you're sharing with me or the experience that you're bringing to me is harsh and difficult for me to get the treasure out of. So if you can bring it to me in a way that I can more easily integrate it, then I'll definitely listen. I'll definitely participate. And the reason I'm adding that piece is because if you find that some energetic intrusion, whether it's in the form of a kriya like Angela was talking about, or inner visions or anything like that, if it does not cooperate in that way, if it doesn't hear your strong request to be delivered in a way that you can work with, that's confirmation that it's not in your highest good. And then that would be a reason to say, I'm not going to merge. Instead of merging and integrating, I want to expel. And I know that's a lot to say, at the end of our conversation. There's a lot more to it than that, but I didn't want to leave you without that guidance, because it feels really important that you've heard that at least once. And then, as I mentioned, you can also get in touch with me. And if you forget how to get in touch with me, you can find out through Angelo. And I would be happy at any point to help you make that discernment, because it's really important. As the radio stations open, some of them are delivering toxic information, as others of them are delivering beautiful music, and it's important to know the difference. Okay, before we go, I'm looking at the chat. I no longer see who it was that wanted to share something. Ian, do you let me know, but I forget. Do you know who that was?
It was Patty K.
Okay, where's Patty? Where are you? She's still with us? Am I covering?
No, it's cool. Go. Just go.
Okay. All right.
I enjoyed this though. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, you're so welcome. So any last question or thought or comment that anybody wants to share before we close tonight? Well, I would like to offer my gratitude for you being open and receptive. I really appreciate all of you for joining this evening and being part of this community that Angelo has curated. I love knowing that it exists. And I also just want to honor you for being willing to listen to as many stations as come through, because the more stations, the more peace, the more harmony when we work with them in this way that we've been talking about tonight. And the world needs this. So you're pioneers for your interest and your practice. And I hope I see you again or hear from you again whenever it's right for you. So thank you so much, everybody.
So real quick, Ian is reminding me to tell you that we have an open sort of holiday event. You'll see about it in your email very soon. Raphael, thank you so much for sharing. It feels like, this is sort of like I feel like it's kind of an introduction to presence, basically. I mean, lots of places to take what you shared. But anyway, I just want to thank you.
Yeah, surf where you can, merge where it makes sense, and your presence will deepen all the way along the way. So yes, beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.